Hi gang, Scott here and welcome to In Post. Thanks for joining me. Well, today's topic is astrophotography, and I've got a few tips for you about processing your Milky Way photos, your night sky photos. If you saw In the Field earlier this week, you'll have seen my adventure out to the Anza-Borrego Desert to capture the night sky. And astrophotography is not something that I do very often, but I really do enjoy it when I get the chance, and so I want to share a handful of processing tips and kind of like a little mini workflow about how I've been going about processing these photos. So let's dive in here. This is the raw image that I captured of the galactic core kind of on its way down the horizon. It was starting to go below the horizon again, and after processing, this is the resulting image. And so in this video, I want to take you through the handful of stages that we went through on this photo. There's really three main ones, and then it's a little bit of style to taste. So let's start with step one. When we look at this raw photo, and I zoom in here, all right, the stars, they're point crisp and so forth. I'm a little farther in than 100%, but we see plenty of noise, right? That is a reality. We are capturing photos at higher ISO. So I'm at f2.8, ISO 3200. There's going to be noise. So step one is deal with the noise. Now, my choice, I use ON1's NoNoise. You might use another noise reduction package. Typically, the built-in noise reduction in Lightroom, that's not enough. But ON1, if you're an ON1 user, you've got NoNoise built into ON1 Photo Raw 2022. So that's step one. And so let me bring you over into NoNoise here. So here's that raw photo in NoNoise, and zooming in at 100%. I've just dialed in a few settings here, and you can see the difference in that noise. If I go into say 200% or 225, little blurry because we're zoomed in so much, but really that noise really gets taken care of. So that's really step one, is you've got to go deal with the noise. You're capturing astro at higher ISOs. There's going to be noise. You got to temper it down. And depending on your noise reduction package, you'll have different settings. For no noise users, there is, for me, it was a little bit of sharpening, but this detail slider, I hover there for a second. This will add a little pop to the points of the stars, right? Those small details in an astro photo, those small details are the stars. So step one, deal with your noise. Then we can go on to our basic processing. That's step two, and there are two key things that we want to do here. So once you've dealt with that noise and you have your noise-free photo, start with your basics. So I'll just walk through some snapshots I have here. First, you're just hitting the auto buttons to get a baseline for the photo. This is not exactly what I want for the basic processing, so you may need to do a little bit of tweaking with your basics. You hit your auto button, fine-tune things here. Like for me, this came out a little bit bright. The exposure got pushed up pretty far, but I did a little fine-tuning on that to rein in that exposure. You can see that went down to maybe a half stop higher, keeping that sky dark. But once you've got your basics done, really tip number two, this one is clarity and dehaze. Now, depending on the package you're using, I'm using Lightroom, the slider's clarity, slider's dehaze. If you're in something like ON1, you'll have a haze slider. You take it negative, that's dehaze. You'll have structure instead of clarity or dynamic contrast. You could use that as well. Luminar has similar tools. It has the atmosphere, and it has the structure AI, things to help cut down haze. So when we add those two things in, clarity and dehaze, that is a big deal. That really starts to let that night sky get very dark, and the stars, and if you've got that galactic core, that cosmic dust, all that stuff there, that starts to show up much, much nicer. From here, you start to get into your localized adjustments and really dealing with the sky, emphasizing if you have, in my case, the galactic core in your photo, you've got the Milky Way there. You want that to really come forward. And a bit of to-taste processing. Do you want things to be a little more purple or a little more blue, or nudging the colors around a little bit, or more accurately, the warmth or the coolness? Those types of adjustments work really nicely for astro. So let's get into the next thing I did here. With this photo, looking at this, I still want this core to pop more. I want the foreground to get even darker. I don't need the the little scrub of the desert. There's not a very interesting foreground there. Just the fact that there's land here, that's enough for me. And I've got that distant light pollution because, wow, even out in the desert, there's you can still see those cities way off in the distance. So next thing was treating the sky. So just treating the sky. I like to have more of that inky blue kind of feel to space. That is personal taste for me. Yours may vary, but just adding that in there, and predominantly the masking area, you can see that mask right there. It's a temperature and tint adjustment. A little bit more of dehaze, add a little more dehaze on there as well, but this is really playing around with our white balance sliders to change that from before to after. Again, my personal taste, I like that kind of inky blueness, and using the temperature sliders to do that as opposed to color tinting. You'll see why in a minute. We're going to play this warm, cool off of one another when we get to the galactic core part of it. But the opposite part of this, next little hint or little tip here is dealing with your foreground. Now, in my case, I do not have an interesting foreground. I wanted to downplay that, darken it. Doing another mask, which was really as simple as taking the one mask I had here and inverting it. And if I selected that one, we are just really exposing it or underexposing it quite significantly. You'll notice the tint as well. That really deep shadow areas took on kind of a greenish tint, a color cast to it. So compensated and pushed that in the opposite direction with that tint. And I suppose if I really wanted to, I could take the saturation down as well. But that's nice and dark. So now my eye is clearly looking at the core. There is context here. If I look very closely, I can see that there are some things on the ground there. They're just very, very deep shadowed. And then finally, another tip here is treat the galactic core, the Milky Way, separately. I'm going to hit that, and we'll really see it pop right up. And if I highlight that mask, you can see it's just a simple radial, nothing fancy. But look at the adjustments. Temperature being raised, exposure being raised, another pop on clarity. And the temperature is what gives it that warmish, purplish yellow kind of feel to it. We're playing off the coolness of the sky that was added earlier and just going the opposite direction, right? Warm, cool, playing those against each other. And it gives it a really nice emphasis. I also backed off the haze. I wanted a little bit of that cosmic dust to kind of have that, that to show through more, and a tiny nudge backwards on dehaze just for that area. So before that change and after. Let me do that without the pin showing here. Let's get that hidden. Before and after. It's quite dramatic, and this is certainly artistic in nature as far as, I'm deciding to give this a coloration here, but I just really like the result. And so, all added up. So this was, we did the noise reduction, we did clarity and dehazing on the photo overall, some selective treatment on the sky to give it a certain kind of tint, and then some selective treatment on the galactic core before all of that and after. So those are the tips I have for you about astrophotography. If you are shooting astro often and you've got other tips, you want to share them in the comments, please do. We can all learn from one another about how to improve the post-processing of our photos. I had fun with this particular photo. I've got a few others in the library I want to go play and tinker with. Maybe I'll give them a bit of a different treatment. Who knows? We'll see how things go. But I hope you enjoyed the video. You got questions? Go ahead and drop those below as well. And until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Have fun.